Our next panel will be for the V20 additional contributions, moderated by the one and only Pamela Doherty. She's the V20 Content Working Group Supervisor. And joining her on the panel will be the V20 delegates Hendrik Bakera, Dr. Asif Chaudhry, Danielle Karici, and Iqra Sheikh.
Hello everybody, and welcome to this final panel discussion of V20 2021. This year we've engaged with an inspiring and diverse group of delegates from across the world. Our community is definitely expanding, and we're constantly encouraging more values experts, practitioners, academics to come and join us in this conversation as we continue to learn and to grow. Today I'll be speaking to 4 of our delegates and chapter authors. I'll be speaking to Danielle Karici, Hendrik Bakera, Iqra Sheikh, and Dr. Asif Chaudhry, who's with me in Rome today. We'll be talking about a wide range of topics that cut across all of our V2021 value themes of integrity, sharing and solidarity. In some regard, the subjects we'll be covering in the next 20 minutes are quite different and quite diverse, but they have one common thread that's really important to me, and that's that we're talking about values-driven approaches around activities and issues that we come across every day in our lives, that are familiar to all of us, that matter to all of us. Now, as a leader of a values-driven organisation in the UK, I feel confident that these topics will be really appreciated by you all. And my final thought before getting into the discussion is, imagine how the world could look if we all just turned up our dial slightly in terms of our human-centred leadership. So I'm going to come to Danielle Karici first. Danielle has done some wonderful work in terms of tackling disinformation. The topic of his chapter is tackling disinformation with values-based resilience. Now, at a time when we're all trying to tackle some common global challenges, disinformation is extremely damaging and damaging to progress. And we heard this from Maliha earlier with her really inspiring speech around issues in the health and care sector. Good to see you, Danielle. My first question is, so why are we so susceptible to fake news?
I will share a personal discovery. Thank you for asking. Why are we so susceptible to fake news? To be short, I discovered our brain's main function is not to seek truth, but only to survive and to be comfortable. That's a key teaching of neuroscience. Therefore, we are very likely to swallow fake news for 3 main reasons. 1, we pretend to have opinions, but actually proclaim mostly phantom opinions, as we do not behave according to our declared values most of the time. 2, we often prefer not knowing. That's rational ignorance. By sheer laziness to seek knowledge, let's face it. And 3, when seeking information, we select congenial sources, usually friends and family, with a confirmation bias, obviously, searching validation of our beliefs from people like ourselves, to reduce the tension between our thoughts and our feelings. It's always the comfort that we're looking for. Misinformation effectively exploits our emotional attachment to congenial stories by driving a wedge between thoughts and feelings, between facts and emotions, making truth feel inconvenient and untruth feel convenient. With enticing cocktails of radical content and emotional spin, the digital media, knowing what we enjoy most, they are very good at that, smartly nudge us to accept exciting stories which they know we are predisposed to adopt. The danger is therefore that the classic media's consensus building role is reversed now as digital media profit from stimulating conflict, which we contribute ourselves to fuel as we turn into fake news disseminators and often unwillingly resulting in polarization.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm really curious about turning to the remedies for what is becoming an exponentially growing problem. So share with us some of your thoughts around how we can remedy this situation.
How can we remedy misinformation? That's a tough task. Even airbrushed or respayed misinformation remains virulent. We've tried many different methods. Any false narrative continues to hold together via its underlying values. We always come back to values. They are the cementing glue, if you like, of any narrative. And our post-truth era value system is encapsulated by the famous quote by Milton Friedman, Nobel Prize in Economy. The only one social responsibility of business is to grow profits, so long as it stays within the rules, and yet embodied in ethical custom. Embodied in ethical custom behavior. Why that ethical dimension ignored? Simply because governments have left or let corporate rule takers become rule makers with excess hubris, promoting misinformation-driven competition and conflict-ridden social customs. As we know, customs are values in action, and even broadcasted values are ineffective unless enacted via norms and regulations. That's what government is supposed to enact. Therefore, we propose that governments avoid the famous but limiting nudging, quote unquote, approach, made famous by a Nobel Prize winner, Mr. Thaler, in 3 ways. Number 1, promote peaceful deliberations on the well-established Stanford deliberative democracy model, which helps reduce polarization effectively. Number 2, convene media, citizens, and political leaders to deliberate with respect for each other's opinions, denounce extreme opinions, and mitigate misinformation by enacting norms and laws. And finally, create a citizen's right to knowledge charter and promote knowledge protection units to help citizens make better informed decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. An important lesson on ethical behaviour. Thank you. I'm going to move to our next chapter with Hendrik. And the title of this chapter is Values-Based Integral Initiative and Project Management. Now, this is a great practical example for me about how to bring values-driven approaches to something that we all do all of the time in business, deliver activities and deliver initiatives. So really great to see a practical example of how we can unlock greater potential with the work that we do. Good to see you, Hendrik. So my first question is, I'd like you to explain precisely what you mean when you talk about values-based, integral, initiative and project management.
Yes, thank you very much. And I'm very inspired by what I hear, what we want to implement in the world. And we know that the speed of implementation has to change drastically, and all the global challenges are with different stakeholders. So regardless of what we want to do in this in the world, we need to have projects and initiatives to bring values to the world. But even though we know that the success of projects depends significantly on the quality of leadership, project management today is mostly used as a methodological toolbox and not as a leadership concept. What is different to classical projects is that we do not only focus on the iron triangle of cost, quality and time, but instead also treat the project as a social system and focus on the leadership of the project and participation. So we call it integral and value-based because we also focus on the stakeholders, as some of my speakers already mentioned. They shouldn't be treated superficially as it's done nowadays in classical project management standards. The global challenge is to actively engage all stakeholder groups by bringing together organizational and human values and balancing them with the structures and processes and the desired project outcomes. Based on people-centric attitude, the value integration project management projects work with a facilitative leadership style, which has been proven to be more successful, using holistic multi-stakeholder approach, very often having a much more participatory decision-making process, so that the values actually live already in the process and the project, not only with the delivery of the end result. And therefore create a value-based collaboration focusing on values like trust, self-organization, accountability and transparency.
So what I hear really loudly from you, Hendrik, is being more human-centric with how we deliver activities. So bringing in that fourth element, which is very different to how we're used to doing business, isn't it? So tell me next, describe for me your vision for this. Where do you see this going? Where do you see the benefits?
Well, the overall benefits are very critical, especially in the large projects like the G20 is doing, because there are different humans coming together, maybe with a different setup, with a different experience. So the minimum factor often is then the traditional idea of project management. But when you really connect on a human level, you can distribute the decision making much faster, so the projects can become more implementing faster and with greater value. And this has been proven over and over again. That you can deliver better results when you trust the people in the projects to co-create, which means also that the projects will adapt, and you can't have a Gantt chart to plan it from A to Z, but it's an evolving system, so that we are learning about the different styles, what works well, and adapt them to the needs of the projects.
Oh, thank you so much, Hendrik. And I think there's a really neat link to the next chapter, which is all about metrics. It's all about measurement, which of course is key to delivering activities such as initiatives and projects. So I'm going to speak to Ikra, who co-authored this chapter, Metrics That Matter, Figures That Foster Multilateral Prosperity. I'm very interested in this work, Ikra, as a leader who really appreciates measurement and particularly impact measurement. I think the first question is an obvious one, so why do metrics matter?
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you all for being here today. It's an honor to be here. In the Quran, in chapter 49, verse 13, it talks about how God created humanity and he made us from different nations and tribes so that we may get to know one another, and how in the eyes of God, the best of us are the most pious. And so I think it's beautiful that we're all coming here together to learn from one another, to get to know one another, and to work together to make the world a better place. But back to your question of why do metrics matter, right? And I think there's three things. One is that metrics are underrated. Metrics tell the stories of people, and metrics are benchmarks. So what I mean when I say metrics are underrated, if you think about GDP, improving GDP brought 1 billion people out of extreme poverty. If you think about the planet, the Montreal Protocol helped heal the ozone layer. And to date, it's the smallest it's ever been. We didn't take any action, it would have been 10 times worse. Metrics tell the stories of people, right? And this is twofold. So on one hand, you have the stories of people behind the metrics. Metrics are meant to improve the quality of life of people, right? And I want everybody around the globe to be free, to have, access to clean air, clean water, food, and shelter, right? And metrics are a way that we can calculate that. But also, metrics are a way of reporting, right? It's like a self-assessment for people, for countries, for businesses. And so we're seeing a lot of vulnerabilities that may have been hidden. So as metrics come out, we're going to see vulnerabilities, and I think it's important that we as a global community respond with kindness, with accountability, and more importantly, with a hand to help. I think metrics are underrated. I think metrics tell the stories of people, and metrics are important benchmarks. So if we want to measure up to our ambitions with people, planet, and prosperity, we need metrics.
Oh, thank you, Ikra. Could I ask you to go even further and describe for us, in a values-driven society, how do metrics work? Just go a bit deeper for us.
Yeah, of course. When I think about the future of metrics, it's explosive, right? Annually we produce over 10 to the 21st digital bits of data. And I think when we think about new technologies like natural language processing, predictive analytics, blockchain, geospatial mapping, and better data control and storage practices, the use cases are profound. And, given the current climate, literally, I think that we need to be more proactive. The IPCC vision paper mentions the need for a global stocktake. The World Bank mentions the need for better metrics beyond GDP and takes a more holistic definition of prosperity, right? If you're talking about, the Sustainable Development Goals, we already have 262 indicators. That's 262 metrics. So we need to kind of simplify them so that way they're more easy to implement. So kind of tying back to Hendrik's point of project management, how do we kind of build that into our systems? And also just scale it up. But I think what also really excites me is ESG, right? And going back to Daniel's point of business taking an action, right? We're talking about environmental, social, and governance reporting. The Sustainability Accounting Standards Board and the Global Reporting Initiative are really helping to standardize that process. And so as I think, as we look forward with metrics, there's a lot of space for us to grow into it, a lot of technology to explore. And so I think there's a huge room for improvement with metrics in terms of how we use it and how it can make a meaningful change in society. And I think just the final thought, because I know we've cut a bit on time, when I think about the future and I think about the challenges, we're facing, I think there's this Italian phrase that goes, e male estreme, estreme remedi. And I think as we start to think about these extreme remedies or solutions, there's another question that comes to mind, and it's often one I ask myself, and it's, are we measuring up to our ambitions? And so that's kind of, what I really would like to leave our audience with today.
Oh, thank you so much, Ikra. Your passion for this topic really comes through, and I have a sense that we're going to be hearing and reading a lot more from you in the future. Thank you. So the last topic we'd like to talk about is trust in government institutions. Dr. Asif Chowdhury, who is sat next to me in Rome. Hi, Asif. I've spoken to you several times on this topic, and I know you're extremely passionate, so I'm looking forward to this next few minutes. Clearly, there is a declining trend in trust in government institutions. The pandemic is one aspect of that, but more broadly, Asif, what are the challenges in building trust? What do you see?
Well, it's a very great question, easy for you to ask, but it is very sensitive to answer. Let's have the herd talk in a very soft, approachable way. I would like to go a little bit back, and I would like to start with a little bit in a metaphoric way. In family, parents are our last resource. We do share, care, we do, give them pains, we achieve the gains together with them as children. The question is why? Why do you do so? Because we believe them. The next question is, why do you believe them? How do you believe them? Because they have built a trust. They have achieved the trust. As a children, we do trust them. No matter what sort of problems we are facing, no matter what sort of achievements we are, gaining in our life, they're the first one we'd like to share with them. So in a family, parents have earned, they have achieved the trust from the children. Similarly, what we need to do from the community leaders, for all the stakeholders and also for the society stakeholders, we need to make sure they're the one also that need to build the trust. Similarly, the leaders from the nation, the national leaders, the global leaders, they need to achieve building the trust from the public as well. Now, you may ask me, then where's the problem? Where's the issue? The issue is we do only concentrate what's in there for me, what's in there for us. It's not a crime to think about what's in there for me and what's in there for us. It's not a crime. But the matter of fact is now, at the time we are standing, we need to also think what's in there for others. Without them, we are nothing. Together, we need to embrace everything. And also, another thing I need to just remind you, and at this occasion I'd like to share with you, which is a big issue indeed. Life is not all about a sport, that here there's a competition, one should win, another should lose. No, life is not all about the competition, especially in interest of the government. While we're building the trust, we shouldn't treat like that way. What we're going to do, we need to concentrate that, okay, life is all about the journey, a value-based journey, where at least there's a no loser. No matter is there anybody who's going to gain or not, but at least we're going to make sure there's no loser. That means once I'm going to achieve something better for my country, once you're going to concentrate something better for your country, we're going to think together for our people as a region to succeed. We cannot forget the rest of the world. We need to succeed together. Otherwise, our success will sustain for the shortest period of time. So this is the time to address the trust building process. Need to start it from the top, from our leaders. Otherwise, it is an issue.
Thank you, Asif. So, as a G20 engagement group, it's critical that we focus on solutions and solutions that work and put forward robust policy recommendations. So Asif, share with me one or two of the solutions that you think we need to really hear and engage with.
Yeah, well, the word solution, recommendation, answer, or the cure, we have got some allergy scientifically. Somehow, once you're going to say to your mom or to your dad, I'm feeling sick, he or she is going to give you a lot of advices. So it's easy to utter, but very tough to act, very tough to stick on it. Now, we need to be also a bit realistic, that, sound me like a little bit frustrating that we're just saying, this is the issue, this is the problem, this is the issue, this is the problem. But eventually, you need to also appreciate the government leaders, the global leaders. They've initiated a lot of projects. They've also tend to improve their country, also to the world. They have achieved some remarkable results. Look at it in terms of the pandemic situation. A lot of countries from different continents, they're performing brilliantly. They've contained the pandemic because they have been doing the job. What's the job? Building the trust. And as the public, we are also putting our trust on them because of their performance. Now, where is the problem and how to solve this problem? As I said, ad hoc basis, in silos, the achievements are there. But we need to think as a global citizen. We need to think about that we are part of one community, one world. So we need to connect these dots. We need this connectivity. Now the question is, what is the baseline of this connectivity? Value and values. Because value is something which is going to provide you the opportunity to sustain your sustainable development for the longer period of time. If you're just only looking for the materialistic or resourceful solution that's going to give you the certain benefit for the shortest period of time, ultimate root, it's going to be value, and values. And at the end, I need to tell you that, like, in our family, we need to depend on our parents, they're the guardians. Similarly, in a country, the leaders, the politicians, they're our guardians. In a global community, global leaders are our guardians. G20 leaders are our guardians. If we do not trust them, to who are we going to trust? They're our last resort. And I'm sure if we do put our trust in them, it's like investment on trust. I'm sure they're going to perform brilliantly. And this is the time to build back stronger with trust, with values. I'm sure there's, a very soon, a good day coming up, whenever every children in this world will just smile together. There will be no inequalities. Why? Because every government, every leaders are building the surface, building the trust among the people with the common ground of values. Let us value the value.
Thank you very much, Asif. And you're right, this is a delicate topic, but an area where a constructive conversation is required. Thank you. Thank you to Asif, Ikra, Daniel and Hendrik. Really different topics we've discussed in that 20 minutes, but all of them extremely pertinent to the shared and global challenges that we're facing. And throughout today, we've talked about some of those. We've talked about climate issues and sustainability. We've talked about the pandemic and issues around our healthcare system. And sometimes when we talk about how to deal with those challenges, it can be motivating for some and it can be overwhelming for others. The one thing that can really help us, is values-based leadership. The lever that we can pull more on is taking a more human-centric approach. And what do I mean when I say that? I mean connecting with people around our shared values, like we've done in this room today. Like promoting the values that are really going to matter to make sustainable change happen. And just being human-centred in the way we do our business every day. I think there for me are the key messages I'd like to leave with you as delegates. And thank you again for those people on the panel. I would say that all of the details of the chapters that we've talked about today are available on the Values 20 website. So please I do encourage you to take a look and digest those. Thank you very much. I'll hand back to Othman.